What disturbs people most about live footage isn't the violence or the screams or even the tragedy. It's the fact that nothing in it can be undone. Every second is final. When something terrible happens on camera, you're not hearing it retold. You're watching it happen exactly as it did. There's a strange dread in realizing you're seeing the exact moment a life changes or ends. Because the camera never blinks, it just waits. Most of the time, the recordings start harmlessly. A quiet drive, rain on a windshield, a laugh in the front seat. Then in one instant, everything shifts, and the footage simply keeps rolling. No edits, no distance, just reality, captured in the split second where safety disappears. Across these 16 stories, you'll see how quickly the ordinary becomes unthinkable. A driver staring at an axe through his windshield. A man intentionally blocking the road, then proceed to walk you down with a bat. A father and son surrounded by fire. Moments that prove the same truth every time. You never know when the camera will start recording the worst day of your life. So go ahead, dim the lights, let the world fall quiet and settle in. Because what you're about to hear isn't dramatized, it's real. And if true stories like this are your kind of thing, consider subscribing. It helps me tell the next one. Now, let's start on a highway, where an ordinary drive turns into something unthinkable. The footage begins like so many uneventful drives. Two men in their late 20s, laughing softly inside a silver Mercedes, coasting down a quiet stretch of highway outside Sydney. The dashcam hums along with the engine, steady, unremarkable. You can hear the click of their music volume lowering as they spot a black sedan speeding up behind them. It veers into their lane, cutting them off. A minor annoyance, nothing more. One of them mutters something about reckless drivers and they slow, giving distance. That small act of patience should have diffused everything. Instead, it becomes the trigger that unravels the next 3 minutes of pure chaos. The sedan brakes hard in front of them, forcing them almost to stop. Then, it swerves sideways, blocking the lane. Inside the Mercedes, their tone turns from irritation to confusion. Before either can decide whether to honk or reverse, the other driver's window rolls down. A hand appears, gripping something metallic. It catches light for only a second, just enough to see it's an axe. You can hear one of the men say,
"Oh, it's got an axe too!"
The next words tremble. The camera records breathing quickening, palms smacking against the dashboard as someone shouts, "Go!" When the Mercedes lurches forward, the axeman starts chasing, weaving behind them, his headlights flickering in the mirror like twin eyes unwilling to blink. What makes this recording unbearable isn't aggression. It's the escalation, the sense of logic dissolving right in front of you. The men try turning off onto an exit, hoping to lose him. He follows. They loop a roundabout. He's still there. Each time they speak, their voices crack a little more. You hear the nerves emptying out, the realization that reason won't work. Then there's a metallic thud as he rams their rear bumper. The camera shakes violently, distortions stretching headlights into streaks. The second hit spins the car sideways. You can almost taste the fear that floods the silence before their engine catches again. Psychologists call this moment the fracture of control. It's when the human brain accepts that rules no longer apply. For these two, every social assumption, traffic laws, fairness, safety, evaporates. They're animals now, running purely on instinct, adrenaline firing faster than words. It's why their laughter earlier in the clip sounds like it belongs to different people. The footage is a study in transformation, calm men becoming survivors inside 90 seconds. They manage one last desperate maneuver, an unexpected U-turn across a median strip, gravel spraying as tires scream. The attacker overshoots, his car spinning off the shoulder into darkness. For several seconds, the only soundtrack is their ragged breathing as one whispers, "Is he gone?" followed by an almost pleading silence. When they finally reach a police station, that silence breaks into disbelief. Hours later, police locate the damaged sedan. Inside, the driver sits shaking, still gripping the axe. Tests confirm what his words soon reveal. He was under a severe methamphetamine hallucination, convinced those strangers had burglarized his home the night before. They hadn't. His mind had split reality into madness, and two random motorists had stumbled into the center of it. That dashcam clip passed through countless hands online, but most who watched it never noticed its real horror. It isn't the weapon or even the chase. It's how instantly the ordinary collapses. A small act, changing lanes, letting frustration go, and yet within minutes, every illusion of safety disintegrates under the pulse of irrational fear. The screen doesn't fade out between calm and chaos. It simply keeps recording, proving how thin that line truly is. That sense of helpless waiting returns in our next story, but this time, the danger isn't human, it's fire moving faster than panic. When you first play the footage, the view looks calm, just trees, a faint summer haze, the low rumble of an engine guiding two people along a dirt road. The date stamp reads August 11th, 2018. Inside the car, Justin Bilton and his 70-year-old father talk quietly as they drive through Montana's Glacier National Park. They've only been camping a few hours, no signal, no real plan besides father and son time in the wilderness. Then, through a small break in the trees, the horizon turns orange. Lightning the night before had sparked a wildfire miles away, but wind and dry brush pushed its front toward them overnight. Their dashcam catches the moment realization sets in. It sounds almost casual at first. You hear Justin say, "That's smoke," followed by his father replying, "We can drive through it." The phrase repeats later, cracked by fear, as the camera looks straight into an approaching wall of brightness. Within minutes, the forest around them shifts from daylight to something else entirely. Smoke folds into every corner of the windshield, and ash begins falling like snow. The camera lens changes color tone, dimming as if it's reacting to the heat. Justin's voice tightens. His father tries to sound calm, but you can hear the panic bleeding through each direction he gives. "Easy, easy, just keep going." The hum of their engine stutters. The air conditioning fan slows. Most people think fire roars, but the dashcam audio is full of hissing punctuated by random thuds, as if the air itself is burning in pieces. A branch crashes across the hood. They're trapped between two moving walls of flame, one eating uphill, one chasing wind toward the road. In those seconds, the camera shows what psychologists call the tunnel effect. When danger closes in completely, perception narrows. You stop noticing detail. Everything simplifies to movement and survival. Justin's breathing accelerates, then evens out. He's entering automatic mode, a physiological override designed for life or death decisions. But no reaction, no training works when there's nowhere to go. The final few minutes of footage capture the raw geometry of being cornered. Ahead, fire. Behind them, smoke so dense headlights can't penetrate it. The engine gauge climbs toward red, then the worst sound, a hollow pop from under the hood, the battery casing beginning to buckle. They stop. In front of the vehicle, a tree falls, blocking the road in a single motion. Justin calmly whispers to his father that it's over, that they can't stay inside or they'll cook. You can hear a door open, the quick intake of breath as outside air hits like a furnace. They grab one small backpack and run toward the dim blue shape they spotted earlier on their map, a lake maybe a quarter-mile away. The dashcam records their silhouettes vanishing into smoke. Then, only darkness. The heat warps the plastic lens until the picture dissolves into melting color. For half a minute, you can still hear the recorder sputtering. Wind and static blend until it fades entirely. Hours later, rescuers found them near the waterline with two park rangers who'd spotted their glow through the haze and guided them to safety. Their car didn't survive. By the time crews returned, it was a metal husk fused into the pavement. The camera itself was warped, its data partially corrupted. Tech teams recovered the footage only because the memory card hadn't reached full ignition before the outer casing liquefied. Watching what remains, you feel more than see the claustrophobia of heat, a deep instinct whispering that nature isn't indifferent. It's absolute. The flame doesn't care that they were good people or that they planned to leave in the morning. It simply consumes. That's what makes the video unforgettable. For 13 minutes, life collapses into one unbearable truth. There is no safe space when the element itself turns on you. And yet, amid the chaos, it's the quiet ending that lingers. The camera falling silent, heat crackling into static. A perfect moment where survival still balances on chance. Because sometimes escape isn't about bravery or planning. It's where instinct meets timing, and both just barely win. That narrow escape leads straight into our next story, when danger appears inches away in the back seat, and no one has time to process what's about to happen. The video begins with the quiet hum of a city not yet awake. Streetlights blink yellow across empty intersections, and a small taxi moves slowly past shuttered storefronts. The timestamp reads 5:42 a.m. Inside, the driver, Ralph Roletta, is speaking softly into his dispatch radio, confirming his first fare of the morning. You can hear the comfort of repetition in his tone. He's done this hundreds of times. Same route, same routine. The dashcam captures a view through the windshield, wet pavement, faint steam from a manhole, distant sirens swallowed by fog. Everything about it says ordinary. At the next stoplight, a passenger slides into the back seat, hood drawn over his head. Nothing about him stands out, just another early rider, maybe heading to work. Ralph presses a key on the meter and starts the car. The two drive in silence for nearly a minute. Then, as they approach a red light, movement catches the tiny lens of the cabin camera. The passenger leans forward slightly, left hand resting on his knee, right hand hidden. There's a small shake to Ralph's rearview mirror as the driver's posture stiffens. Instinct recognizes something before the conscious mind can name it. And then it happens. The passenger sits upright, pulling a small handgun into view. His voice is low but hard, telling Ralph to hand over the cash. You can almost feel the static inside that small space. The soundless shock when familiarity breaks. Psychologists refer to it as limbic paralysis, the body's freeze response catching up to sudden threat. Ralph's breathing stops for 2 full seconds. He doesn't turn his head. The camera catches only the muscles in his jaw tightening. What neither man knows is that a police cruiser has just pulled up behind them at the light. Through the rear window, you can see the faint reflection of blue emergency lights as they flicker once, unnoticed. On the dashcam audio, the gunman demands faster compliance, repeating himself, voice cracking under pressure. When the light turns green and the taxi doesn't move, the officer steps out to check. The next seconds feel like a physical echo, 2 overlapping realities colliding. The cruiser's door slams, boots hit pavement, then a command. "Show me your hands." The gunman looks up. The taxi's interior floods with blue. The weapon slips from his grasp, hitting the floor with a muffled clang. Out of instinct more than obedience, Ralph raises both hands, as if to prove he isn't part of this scene. Confusion overtakes fear. The officer rounds the open door, pulls the passenger out, and cuffs him against the hood. The entire arrest unfolds within 17 seconds, but watching it later feels longer. Each heartbeat stretches inside that confined space. When silence returns, it's almost intrusive. You hear rain begin again, tapping lightly on the windshield. Ralph stays there frozen, staring into the mirror where the empty back seat slowly comes back into focus. In interviews, he would later describe the moment not as terror, but dislocation, like watching someone else's life happening through glass. That's the subtle cruelty of proximity to violence. When danger breaches personal space, it reshapes time itself. For viewers, the disturbing part isn't the gun, it's what the camera reveals about hesitation. You witness a man's mind wrestle between submission and survival without a single word spoken. The difference between life and death condensed into inches. And those inches, once crossed, can never be fully reclaimed. The footage ends with the officer's radio crackling, routine phrases signifying control restored. But the expression in Ralph's eyes says otherwise. Control didn't return, it simply left the frame. That silence after crisis, when safety technically exists but the body hasn't caught up, echoes again in our next story, when a man sees something he shouldn't have, and no one can explain what he saw. The dashcam footage opens on a dark Australian highway lit by nothing but high beams and the occasional green road sign. A man named Mitch Kuhn is driving home after a work shift, his trailer rattling softly behind him. The dashboard clock glows 9:13 p.m. You can hear the steady rhythm of wipers cutting drizzle, ordinary, repetitive, almost calming. Then, in the distance, something breaks that rhythm, a shape in the lane ahead, small, motionless, half illuminated by oncoming light. At first, Mitch assumes it's debris or maybe an animal, but as seconds pass, the silhouette moves upright. It isn't road litter, it's a person. When his headlights catch the figure fully, the resemblance is unmistakable. The height, the posture, it looks like a child wrapped in a blanket, walking along the center line with no shoes visible. There's no car pulled over, no hazard lights, nothing else on the road. Mitch gasps, swerves fractionally to avoid hitting them. You hear the trailer frame shudder as he corrects. For viewers, that moment of half-collision is the shred of horror that defines the clip. The lights sweep past the figure, and it vanishes into darkness behind the truck. Mitch whispers through his shallow breathing, trying to process what he's just seen. Within 30 seconds, he's dialing emergency services, reporting what he believes is an unattended child wandering a highway. His voice trembles between urgency and disbelief. The operator instructs him to pull over ahead and stay on the line. He parks by a small rest stop, hazard lights blinking. While recounting details, you hear Mitch's voice begin to steady as the assumption of order returns. Professionals are on their way. Someone will handle it. The dispatcher tells him patrols have been dispatched, that he's done everything right. He offers to share the footage, but the operator says they likely won't need it unless the situation escalates. The relief in his tone is immediate, almost audible. A man convincing himself someone else will finish the story. But the story doesn't end there. An hour later, uneasy, Mitch calls again to check in. This time a new dispatcher answers and tells him no child has been located anywhere along that route. Confused, he repeats the details. Exact location marker, direction of travel, timestamp. The operator pauses, confirming search teams scanned until nearly 4 a.m. and found nothing. Stranger still, there are no missing person reports matching a child anywhere nearby. The voice on the other end adds carefully, "We have no record of the earlier call saying the child was found." That statement fractures the comfort Mitch built for himself. The next morning, he sends in his dashcam clip anyway. Police examine it, verify the time, and publicly acknowledge receiving unusual footage. What they don't do is explain it. Within days, the video circulates online, slowed down and analyzed frame by frame. Some viewers swear they see reflections where the headlights should have landed, meaning the figure had no shadow. Others point out motion blur consistent with fabric moving in heavy wind, claiming it's just optical distortion. None of that accounts for the pattern of footsteps clearly visible in the lower beam sweep. Psychologists studying the reaction called it an example of unresolved threat. When fear doesn't find closure, the mind fills the gap with myth. Mitch did everything correctly, avoided collision, reported danger, sought answers. Yet what he caught on his camera denies resolution. The identifiable becomes unknowable. That's why the clip haunts, not because harm is visible, but because you can't prove harm didn't happen. Months after, drivers along that stretch reportedly began slowing instinctively near the same kilometer marker. No new sightings, no further reports. Just the lingering knowledge that once, under those lights, someone or something crossed the line between explanation and enigma. And when the mind can't explain what the camera shows, it starts inventing possibilities darker than truth. When mystery mixes with nature's violence, even the sky can turn against us. On the morning of June 2, 2016, the streets of Tainan, Taiwan, looked harmless. A gray drizzle misted across cars lined up for the evening commute, windshield wipers keeping their slow rhythm. Nothing in the dashcam footage suggests danger. The camera sits steady behind the wheel of a small blue hatchback, its frame catching storefronts flashing by in the reflection of shallow puddles. The driver, a man in his mid-40s, hums under his breath. He'd done this drive hundreds of times, always predictable, always safe. The timestamp rolls forward calmly, until it doesn't. At first, it's barely noticeable. Paper scraps skid along the asphalt, then lift, hesitating in midair before shooting upward as if pulled by an invisible thread. The driver turns his head briefly. You see it happen through the corner of the lens. There's a single word spoken in Mandarin, a muted expression that loosely translates to wind. He chuckles softly, unaware he's describing what's about to consume him. Over the next 20 seconds, that stray gust grows violent. The audio turns to static, mic distortion caused by sudden pressure drop. Viewers later compared it to the sound of distant underwater detonations. You hear metal creaking, tires slipping, the shrill scraping of signs collapsing. Then, in a blur, every loose object on the road begins tumbling forward. Plastic bins, leaves, shattered glass from a distant storefront. The darkness outside gains texture, forming into a churning wall of grit. By the time the driver yells, "Hold on," the air itself looks alive. What the camera captures in that single line of sight is almost impossible to comprehend without freezing the frame. A van several meters ahead begins to tilt upward. Its rear wheels leave the ground in slow motion before the entire vehicle lifts sideways and vanishes into the swirl. The blue hatchback pitches violently, The driver's breath catches. He clutches the steering wheel even though control is meaningless. Outside, the sky folds into rotating gray, panoramic but featureless. A woman's voice screams, "The passenger," then cuts off as debris strikes the windows. For roughly 9 seconds, the footage shows nothing but chaos. Buildings dissolve into streaks of brown. Power lines spark white arcs. Then just as abruptly, the world stops. The interior is unlit, and the only noise left is wind dying out. You can tell the driver's conscious because you hear short gasps, deliberate yet shaking. He whispers someone's name, followed by a choked cough. Through the cracked windshield, sunlight reappears, carrying dust like fog. The camera remains trained forward on what used to be a street, now a corridor of splintered poles and crushed vehicles. The van from before lies warped against a tree trunk, smoke rising faintly from its hood. Emergency crews would later find the couple still inside their hatchback, both alive but injured. The woman's arm was broken. The man had deep cuts along his hairline where glass embedded. And yet, in that fragile survival, the footage holds something deeper than luck. Meteorologists later classified the storm as an EF2 tornado, one of several spawned by the same typhoon system, but classification fails to convey the intimacy of danger inside that car. Watching it, you feel nature compressing scale, turning humans, machines, and concrete into equal fragments within the same rotation. Psychologically, this clip triggers what researchers call anticipatory dread. The normal audio, small laughter, soft music, keeps playing even as visuals degrade. Our brains expect warning signs, narrative buildup. But weather doesn't narrate, it acts. That mismatched rhythm, the calm soundtrack laid over spiraling ruin, forces the viewer to accept randomness in its purest form. Because if air, invisible and harmless 1 minute earlier, can become predator without introduction, then nothing in our environment is ever truly stable. After the storm, rescuers replayed the dashcam footage to understand timing. The driver never blinked when the van lifted. His body, locked into shock, moved only as physics allowed. He'd later describe that state not as terror, but awe, an awareness that control had never belonged to him. That comment, simple and resigned, defines why this entry belongs among the most disturbing ever captured. It's not spectacle, it's surrender. 15 seconds of calm, 9 seconds of destruction, a lifetime redefined. When calm air chooses to turn predatory, there's no enemy, no warning, only the cold reminder that survival sometimes depends entirely on randomness, and that the lens, unfeeling and eternal, will always remember what we prefer to forget. The road in the footage looks endless. Just a strip of dirt cutting through miles of pale countryside outside Nizhny Novgorod. The light is fading, but not yet dark. A single dashboard reflection flickers across the windshield as the driver hums softly to static radio. He's alone, heading home from a construction site, the kind of quiet drive where you start to forget you're moving at all. And then, far ahead, something interrupts the horizon. A car sitting sideways across both lanes. Its hazard lights flash twice, then stop. At first it reads as coincidence, a breakdown, maybe someone needing help. The driver slows out of instinct, polite caution. The dashcam records the speedometer sinking from 80 to 40, then 20. Two silhouettes emerge from the blocked car, walking toward him, one carrying a long object slung casually against a shoulder. There's a small hitch in the driver's breathing that the microphone catches, so soft you'd miss it unless you were listening for fear. He taps his brakes once, then hesitates. One figure raises a hand as if signaling him closer, an everyday motion that feels suddenly wrong. The other shifts his stance, widening feet, both hands visible now. The metallic line of a bat catches daylight. The driver's right hand moves out of frame, probably reaching for the gear shift. The voices outside grow audible through cracked windows. Short commands in Russian, not friendly, not threatening yet, but performed, rehearsed. In that instant, there's a thin slice of time where nothing irreversible has happened. He could roll to a stop, offer help, pretend to believe the story they're about to invent. Instead, survival instincts override curiosity. The car stops for less than a full second before the camera jolts backward. The reverse lights flash, dust clouds up behind him. One man runs forward, bat raised. The other waves his arms, shouting. Gravel spits against the lens as the vehicle accelerates in reverse. Then the frame twists sharply left. The driver drops into a shallow ditch, scraping metal but keeping traction. Through the front window, both attackers vanish behind brown haze. You can hear his foot stay pressed down. the small engine groaning as the rear tires bite into earth. The dashcam image wobbles with each bump until the road ahead appears again, clear, empty, open to escape. He doesn't stop, doesn't speak. The only sound is the deep, rhythmic panic of forced breathing. When the police later analyzed the footage, they confirmed what the driver already knew. It wasn't random. The car in the road was part of a small theft ring staging fake breakdowns. By parking across both lanes, closing escape routes, they'd trap isolated motorists and rob them before vanishing onto farm access tracks. There had been 3 similar reports in the same area that month, but none with proof, until this clip. The dashcam's detail, the license plate partially legible through dust, led investigators to one suspect within days. For most who saw it online, the fascination wasn't about crime, it was about the feeling of near collision between rationality and intuition. You can watch the exact second his decision shifts from empathy to terror. The moment isn't cinematic, it's psychological. Humans evolved to read subtle wrongness, posture angles, mismatched gestures, anything that silently screams trap. That ancient mechanism still operates even behind glass and steel, long before conscious thought, and that's what makes this footage disturbingly human. There's no dialogue, no overt violence, just the primal calculus of trust collapsing. 1 second, the driver sees 2 men in need. The next, his instincts warn that compassion might equal death. He obeys that warning and it saves him. Psychologists later noted how his breathing never normalizes after he's safe. Long past the threat, oxygen still floods his system as if danger clings invisibly to the air. That's what trauma does. It tricks the body into remembering seconds as permanent. The clip ends uneventfully, engine noise fading into distance, the horizon retaking its silence. But the dread remains, captured forever by a lens that saw everything yet understood nothing. Because sometimes terror isn't about what happens, it's about what almost did. The scene opens under a pale sky tinted brown by distance haze. A line of fire trucks moves steadily across rural South Australia, their engines pounding low through cracked headsets. It's November 2015, and crews are responding to what dispatch first labeled a manageable grass fire. There's nothing cinematic at the start, just coordination, radio chatter, routine. One firefighter jokes about dinner. The dashcam mounted in the second truck records the road unspooling ahead, heat shimmer rippling against golden fields. Then, almost imperceptibly, the light begins to change. It starts as a dull orange glow at the horizon. Within seconds, that glow becomes glare. Visibility drops from kilometers to meters. Over the radio, someone says, "Wind shift, 40 degrees, moving fast." The statement cuts halfway as static floods the speaker. The camera picture flickers, first due to smoke density, then power interference. Inside the cab, voices lose their rhythm. "Hold position," the leader orders. "We'll assess." That pause lasts 2 seconds too long. The landscape outside explodes in color. Branches ignite midair, embers flying like swarm insects. The fire hasn't surrounded them yet, but it's coming. From that moment forward, time forfeits normal meaning. The dashcam image shudders as both vehicles brake, but smoke hides distance. The lead truck stops hard, its outline a dark box glowing at the edges, while the one with the camera, blinded, keeps rolling until collision. The impact isn't dramatic, more like a shove from nothing. A fire hose reel clatters across the hood. You hear startled shouts, then calm professionalism cutting through. "We've hit. No injuries. Going burn over, now." Those words, clipped and procedural, carry the sound of experience confronting inevitability. A burnover means sealing yourself inside and letting the world literally burn around you. Curtains drop over the windows, thin silvered fabric meant to reflect heat. Breathing masks deploy as sprinkler lines hiss external water streams. The dashcam's microphone fills with hiss. Every syllable outside distorts into wet static. For one impossible minute, it looks like daylight itself has liquefied. Flames press close enough to distort glass. The men inside recite readings, air temperature up 7 degrees per second. Then sprinklers falter. You hear confusion, then someone repeating, "Spray failure." In the other vehicle, the one without functioning pumps, the crew has no choice. They disengage from radio etiquette. "We're pushing through," someone yells, barely audible. Out of the dashcam window, that truck edges forward, shape flickering white against the inferno, and disappears. Inside the recording cab, the crew hunch lower, oxygen tanks humming like mechanical hearts. One mutters quietly, "Just breathe." Wait it out. 2 minutes of muffled noise pass before brightness fades to sepia. The air clears incrementally, smoky light filtering back into the frame. The driver's gloved hand reaches out, trembling, pulling up the curtain. What's revealed feels post-apocalyptic. Earth stripped to gray ash, fence posts like bones, black sky raining soot. The other truck reappears far ahead, idling, silhouettes waving. Against calculation and odds, both crews survive. Later investigators calculate temperatures exceeding 900 degrees Celsius at windshield level. The metal around the dashcam softened, lens edges fused to mount. Psychologically, the footage embodies what survival researchers call mechanical calm. When response is reduced to trained sequence rather than emotion, people detach to avoid panic. Yet that detachment carries weight afterward. Several firefighters reported phantom warmth on their skin weeks later, an echo imprint of heat their bodies still believed existed. Watching the clip, you too feel that residual fever, the kind no water douses. What unsettles viewers isn't destruction, but intimacy. The camera doesn't watch from safety, it's trapped inside the same danger. Every flicker on screen is physics rewriting rules you thought permanent. Air turning lethal, daylight devouring itself. When the recording ends, silence replaces roar, but comfort never really returns. There's only the heavy certainty that for those minutes, earth and flame made a pact no human could negotiate. The firefighters lived precisely because they stopped fighting the fire and let protocol, impersonal, unfeeling, do the work of survival. And that's the haunting conclusion. Sometimes the only way to outlast catastrophe is to surrender control entirely, trusting that procedures built by strangers will hold while instinct screams otherwise. The footage proved it's possible, but also that awareness never fades. Every viewer senses the same truth as the men inside that cabin. Sometimes courage isn't loud or dramatic. It's waiting motionless while the world outside burns, believing the thin glass between you and oblivion will keep holding for 1 minute longer. The dashcam clip begins in the dull quiet of a Moscow afternoon in late December 2012. The highway slicing past Vnukovo Airport looks ordinary. Cars gliding through light snow, wipers ticking measuredly. The driver, a man named Pavel, hums an off-key melody beside his wife. Their conversation is faint, about groceries, about warmth leaking from the cabin vents. The camera's frame stays fixed on rhythm, white lines flashing beneath steady motion, proof of normal life unfolding second by second. Normal, until the horizon changes color. A shape emerges from cloud cover, indistinct at first. To the untrained eye, it could be another jet approaching its landing path. But something feels wrong. The angle is steep, its descent faster than sound should follow. You hear nothing unusual yet, just the engine of the car and the gentle squeak of tires over wet asphalt. Then the lens trembles. A thunderous note climbs through the audio spectrum, saturating every frequency. Pavel's wife stops mid-sentence. He looks up. There's no time for comprehension because in 3 seconds the sky collapses. Without warning, a Tupolev 204 passenger jet bursts through the top of the frame. It's not gliding, it's falling sideways toward the road. The perspective freezes human time into milliseconds. Massive fuselage cleaving space, pieces already breaking loose in the wake. The camera's exposure distorts, turning flame into white void. A mile from its intended runway, the plane slams through the perimeter embankment and disintegrates across 6 lanes of traffic. Debris flares at windshield level, sections of wing, rubber, luggage tumbling end over end. Pavel's car veers right. You can't even hear tires. The microphone overloads into hiss. A fragment, metal panel the size of a door, ricochets against his bumper, spraying sparks that briefly light the interior blue. His wife screams once, cut short by shock. The next instant, silence. Just drifting snowflakes illuminated by fires behind guardrails. The dashcam stares straight ahead like it can't blink, showing wreckage blooming through smoke. The world slows down again, as if shocked at its own violence. Emergency sirens arrive faintly on the audio long after the visual end. Investigators later reconstruct the sequence. The plane, flying home empty of passengers, overshot the icy runway during heavy crosswinds. Its reverse thrusters failed to deploy on time. Momentum carried it through barriers and down onto the highway, killing 5 of 8 crew members instantly. Miraculously, every civilian motorist survived, including Pavel. The official term for such failure, runway excursion, sounds sterile. The footage gives it body, noise, and consequence. Psychologically, this recording isolates a peculiar terror, sudden catastrophe inside monotony. There's no narrative buildup, only the clean snip of reality splitting apart. Neurologists describe viewer reaction as temporal intrusion, the mind refusing to believe unrelated worlds, aviation and commuting, can intersect lethally within seconds. Watching it, you sense dread not from gore or explosions, but from how routine collapses seamlessly into tragedy. One wrong approach vector and normal evaporates. For days, local stations replay the clip in slow motion. Analysts trace flight trajectories. Experts explain crosswinds. Yet what ordinary people remember most is that single, impossible frame. The moment wings fill half the windshield, it redefined safe space. Highways, once symbols of distance from danger, became witness stands for death from above. The irony stings deeper because every element meant for control, engine power, modern design, practiced landing procedure, failed simultaneously. In interviews, Pavel admitted the crash looked unreal even as it happened. His brain separated scene from sensation. He recalls thinking there must be a billboard prank. Later, playback proved otherwise, forcing his memory to reconcile with proof. That disconnect, watching truth confront disbelief, is what makes real footage so disturbing. You can't rationalize sequence or setting. You only recognize that life simply stopped obeying context. And in those frozen seconds, both ground and sky belong to chaos. It starts, as most horrors do, on an ordinary road, before anyone realizes that what's waiting ahead isn't chance, it's intent. The footage begins in the early morning hours of Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. The driver, a man, and his wife have just crossed the border. The streets are dark, damp, and quiet, the kind of quiet that feels less like peace and more like holding your breath. Ahead, a strange sight. Cars are stopped in the middle of the road, blocking traffic, with several figures standing outside. At first, the scene looks innocuous, maybe an accident or a mechanical failure. But as the driver slows, a subtle wrongness sets in. The figures outside don't look concerned. They look ready. One car in the middle lane shifts forward, creating a path, an invitation. But as the driver attempts to pass, a pickup truck suddenly cuts across the open path, slamming the door shut. The camera captures the instant the situation fractures. The figures rush the car, banging on the windows and pulling violently at the door handles, shouting commands in Spanish. The driver realizes instantly, this isn't a breakdown, it's a planned ambush, a cartel roadblock designed to trap unsuspecting motorists for robbery or worse. Psychologists call this the collapse of context. The familiar rules of the road are instantly replaced by the primal laws of survival. The driver's body reacts before his mind can process the details. He slams the gas, pushing his vehicle against the blockade. You hear the deep scrape of metal and the frantic shouts from outside. The vehicle lurches forward, forcing its way past the truck, finally escaping the trap and speeding back in the opposite direction. The raw terror of this clip is the sudden, intimate proximity of intentional violence. For one terrifying minute, the barrier between the driver and pure evil was just a pane of glass and a locked door. The assailants were looking for trucks to steal or valuables to take, but the driver's quick, aggressive decision saved his life. The psychological footprint left by such an encounter is immense. The driver escaped, but the knowledge that he was deliberately hunted and that the routine of a morning drive was weaponized against him remains permanent. The footage is a grim reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing on the road isn't an accident, it's calculated human malice. But the next story shows that even when you're trained for danger, when your job is to face it, nature can still find a way to corner you. In late November 2015, fire crews battled a catastrophic bushfire in South Australia. The Dashcam is mounted inside a fire truck, recording a convoy moving through dense smoke. The audio is a chaotic mix of engine noise and clipped professional radio chatter, the sound of trained men trying to impose order on nature. As they drive deeper, the visibility drops to near zero. The smoke turns the camera lens brown, then a blinding orange. Over the radio, a voice cuts through the static with a terrifying report. The wind has shifted, and the fire is moving directly toward them at a terrifying speed. The trucks are forced to stop. What happens next is a study in controlled panic. A miscommunication causes the camera truck to collide with the lead vehicle. Then the realization sets in: they are trapped. The road ahead and behind is engulfed. The crew begins the burnover procedure, a last resort protocol where firefighters seal themselves inside the truck, deploy heat-reflective blankets, and spray water to keep the vehicle from igniting. The dashcam records the world outside turning into a maelstrom of liquid fire. Flames press against the glass, and the internal temperature readings begin to spike. The terror escalates when the crew in the lead truck announces their water sprinklers have failed. They make a desperate, almost unimaginable choice. They push through the inferno, vanishing into the white-hot blur of the fire, hoping to outrun it. Inside the camera truck, the remaining crew is forced to wait, oxygen tanks humming, trusting their training as the world literally burns outside. The footage is a testament to what survival researchers call mechanical calm, the ability to detach from emotion and follow procedure when instinct screams for flight. Miraculously, both crews survived. The lead truck made it to the other side of the fire. The camera truck, though damaged, endured the heat. The footage that remains is a chilling document of a moment where human control vanished entirely, leaving survival up to the thin layer of metal and water surrounding them. It's a terrifying reminder that even when facing a massive, consuming force like fire, the difference between life and death can be measured in a single, desperate decision. And yet, even after escaping a wall of fire, the most haunting moments often come from what can't be explained at all. The dashcam footage is from a highway in Australia in April 2021. It's late evening, the road is dark, and the only illumination comes from the driver's high beams. The driver, Mitch Kuhn, is alone, towing a trailer. Then, the lights catch a shape ahead, a small, motionless figure in the middle of the lane. As the car gets closer, the figure reveals itself to be a person, possibly a child wrapped in a blanket, walking along the center line. Mitch swerves, narrowly missing the figure, and pulls over to call the police, reporting an unattended child on the highway. The police assure him they've dispatched patrols. Mitch hangs up, relieved that professionals are taking over. But when he calls back an hour later to follow up, the relief shatters. A new dispatcher informs him that no child was found despite a thorough search. Furthermore, the police deny ever telling him a child was found and safely returned home. The dashcam footage becomes the only proof. What did Mitch see? A hallucination? A phantom? The figure was clearly visible, yet vanished without a trace, leaving no footprints or evidence of a missing person. This case perfectly illustrates the psychological phenomenon of unresolved threat. The brain is left with an irreducible mystery. The figure was real enough to force a near-fatal swerve, yet unreal enough to defy all rational explanation. The camera witnessed the event, but the digital proof only deepens the enigma. For Mitch, the video is a haunting artifact. It proves he wasn't crazy, but it also proves that something completely inexplicable crossed his path. The figure remains an enduring, unsolved mystery, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most disturbing things caught on camera are the things that shouldn't be there at all. But while some threats vanish without reason, others fall from the sky without warning, turning ordinary lives into impossible headlines. In Southern California in January 2015, James Shaw Jr. was taking his Subaru Forester for a joyride on the Angeles Crest Highway. He was an auto enthusiast who loved the sound of his exhaust echoing in the mountain tunnels. The dashcam captures him speeding up as he approaches the second tunnel, chasing that perfect sound. What James didn't know was that a sharp, unexpected turn lay immediately at the exit of the tunnel. Going too fast, he loses control. The footage captures the terrifying skid as the car hurtles toward the edge of the high-elevation road. The sound of tires screaming gives way to the sickening crunch of metal as the car flies over the side. The camera, still recording, is plunged into a chaotic blur of earth and sky, but then a sheer stroke of luck intervenes. A drain pipe sticking out from the steep slope catches the car, stopping its fatal descent down the mountain. James was left completely uninjured, suspended precariously above a deadly drop. The psychological punch of this moment is the instant consequence of arrogance. James was pushing the limits of control for a thrill, and the universe responded with brutal, immediate physics. The footage is a powerful lesson in the fragility of life when pitted against speed and gravity. He later climbed out and called for help, his car totaled. He posted the footage himself, hoping others would learn from his mistake. But the clip remains a chilling document of just how close he came to becoming an unrecovered statistic, a reminder that a single brief impulse can lead directly to the thin line between life and death. Yet for every survivor saved by luck, there's another who discovers how fragile the world beneath them really is. This dashcam footage, captured in Slovakia in 2012, shows a family driving down a narrow country road. Heavy rain has saturated the area for days, but the drive seems manageable as they navigate around a few fallen trees. Then, as they approach a second fallen tree, the unexpected happens. The camera captures a terrifying chain reaction. A tree just ahead begins to fall, and the small force it exerts on the surrounding waterlogged ground is enough to start a domino effect. More trees begin to crack and fall, collapsing closer and closer to their vehicle. The family attempts a desperate reverse, but the massive trunks catch up to them, crashing directly onto the top of their car, trapping them inside. The audio is filled with the terrifying sound of splintering wood and the family's panicked shouts. It was later determined that the extensive rain had caused ground destabilization, leaving the trees with almost no hold in the soil. The initial tree fall was enough to bring down dozens more. This clip is a powerful illustration of environmental betrayal. We rely on nature's stability, but here the very ground and the familiar trees turned into a crushing, unpredictable force. The terrifying part is the sheer helplessness. There is no way to fight or escape a kinetic chain reaction of falling timber. The family survived, but the damage to their vehicle was severe. The footage captures the fear of being pinned, unable to move as the weight of the forest crashes down around you, a profound reminder of how quickly the natural world can turn predatory. And sometimes the force waiting to crush you isn't human or even alive. It's the chain reaction no one saw coming. This footage, captured in Australia in June 2022, is a quick, unsettling example of road violence. The driver is stopped at a red light, waiting to turn left. In the rear-facing camera, a Mercedes pulls up right behind their vehicle. Almost immediately, the driver's side door of the Mercedes swings open, and a man steps out, moving quickly toward the dashcam car. He is clutching some sort of long, metallic object. Fortunately, the driver was looking in their rearview mirror and saw the door open. That instant of awareness gave them just enough time to react. They slammed on the accelerator, driving off the road, across a patch of grass, and cutting in front of 3 other cars to escape. The man from the Mercedes is left standing alone in the roadway as the dashcam car speeds away. The driver later uploaded the footage, stating they had no idea what the man wanted. They speculated they might have cut him off earlier, but no evidence of that exists in the video. The man could have been attempting a robbery, or perhaps something far more sinister. This short clip is a masterclass in preemptive terror. The driver didn't wait for a demand or a threat. They acted purely on the visual cue of a stranger approaching with hostile intent. The footage captures the split-second decision that averted disaster. The true horror lies in the ambiguity. The driver will never know what that man wanted, leaving the mind to fill the gap with the darkest possibilities. The mere sight of a stranger with a weapon was enough to instantly shatter the security of a modern vehicle, proving that the threat of random violence is always closer than we think. But as terrifying as a stranger's rage can be, nothing compares to when the world itself turns against you. This final piece of footage, recorded in May 2020, shows a vehicle driving down a highway in heavy rain and high winds. The area had been experiencing severe storms, and the driver is struggling to maintain visibility and control. As the car pushes forward, the camera captures a catastrophic infrastructure failure. Up ahead, a power line begins to tip over. It snaps, starting a chain reaction that brings down multiple power poles and lines with it. The sight is horrifying. Electrical cables and debris explode as they hit the wet ground, creating a shower of blinding white and blue sparks that light up the rain-soaked highway. A motorcyclist coming from the opposite direction manages to stop just in time, abandoning his bike and running on foot into a nearby field to escape the live wires. The dashcam driver quickly follows suit, veering off the road onto a dirt path, trying to put distance between their vehicle and the exploding power lines. The clip is a vivid, terrifying reminder of the danger posed by a modern, electrified world under siege by nature. We rely on infrastructure to protect us, but here, the infrastructure itself becomes the primary threat. The sheer visual spectacle of exploding power lines on a wet highway is pure, unadulterated shock. This incident highlights the fear of secondary catastrophe, the moment a natural disaster triggers a man-made one. It is a moment of pure electric panic where the ground you stand on and the air you breathe are suddenly laced with lethal potential. The footage ends with the power line still sparking in the distance, a frightening image of a highway turned into a deadly, electrified trap. What lingers most after watching any of these recordings isn't the chaos itself. It's the silence that follows. Long after the screams, the crash, the wind, there's always one constant sound left behind. The faint mechanical hum of the camera still running. That quiet persistence is what makes live footage terrifying. It doesn't participate. It doesn't comfort. It just observes. A perfect witness that never forgets. Every person in these stories brushed against that thin line between life and death, and the lens marked the exact place they crossed. For some, like Justin and his father in Glacier Park, the footage ends seconds before the world goes black with heat. For others, like the diver under pressure or Ivan on that winter highway, the camera keeps capturing even when understanding collapses. Those devices have no concept of mercy or timing. They carry on collecting proof long after human consciousness has given up. Cameras were made to preserve truth, but they also expose how fragile that truth is when life breaks mid-frame. They show the line separating control and panic, confidence and disbelief, the moments people realize their survival isn't guaranteed. That's why so many who survive can't bring themselves to rewatch their own recordings. What they see isn't themselves, it's who they were seconds before realizing how easily they could vanish. We like to say cameras protect us. Dashcams deter crime, security systems guard homes, GoPros celebrate experience. But the reality is colder. They're impartial. They turn our best and worst moments into data, indifferent to outcome. In one sense, they save us through evidence. In another, they trap us in perpetual replay. Because once an image is captured, it never stops existing. Even when justice or understanding follows, the footage remains as a silent monument to the exact instant everything went wrong. There's a deeper reason people can't look away from these clips. Beneath curiosity is identification. Watching another human face danger activates the same biological warnings inside our brains, the same chemical rush that would prepare us to run or fight if we were there. It's a safe rehearsal for catastrophe, but also a reminder that safety is temporary. Every replay renews that tension. We tell ourselves we watch to learn, yet what we're really doing is confirming that chaos is possible everywhere, on roads, in water, in skies, in forests. In a strange way, that's why recording devices feel almost supernatural. They extend human awareness into moments no one could survive to describe. They don't blink during explosions, fires, or collisions. They don't let fear shake their focus. They simply keep seeing, and through them, we inherit the unbearable privilege of witnessing what otherwise would have vanished unremembered. The footage becomes a kind of scripture for our modern age, terrifying, reverent, and unalterable. For survivors, life continues past the frame, but the recording freezes the part of them that didn't know they'd make it. That's the cruel balance of endurance. You move forward while another version of you stays trapped inside permanent evidence. For those who didn't make it out, the camera becomes their last voice, looping their existence for strangers who will never meet them. In either case, no one ever truly leaves once the record light is on. And maybe that's the truest reason these images disturb. They prove that the line separating ordinary from irreversible is only as wide as a lens aperture. A random second, a single reaction, the angle of headlights. Each decides whether we keep existing or become ghosts in data. No one plans for it. It just happens, and the machines keep watching. So as you log off tonight and the screen fades to black, remember what that blackness means. It's the same void every lens returns to once the moment ends. Different stories, same darkness. The footage never blinks, it waits. If you made it this far, I'd love to know which moment stayed with you the most. Tell me in the comments. And if you want more real stories that sit on that razor's edge between life and death, where ordinary moments unravel into the unthinkable, go ahead and like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because somewhere, right now, another camera is already recording the next story we'll talk about here on The Last Two Awake.